So one of the major continuities in North American history throughout the 20th century is oil. Oil is what we base our lives around. It's the fuel that runs our cars, and we have to go through a whole process to refine it, and we always have. Crude oil is the oil that is extracted directly from the ground. It exists beneath the surface all over the world, through the Middle East, North America, and through our world's oceans. Oil itself is made up of hydrocarbon chains. When crude oil is refined, the different hydrocarbon chains boil off at different points. And when they boil off at different points, you get different outputs of energy. The main product of crude oil distillation is gasoline, a product used as a fuel source in every part of our lives. Gasoline consists of hydrocarbon chains with 7 to 11 molecules. The hydrocarbon chains with more than 12 carbons are used in other fuels such as diesel and gas or an engine oil.
So now we're going to tell you how oil is formed. All the microscopic organisms that have lived and died throughout billions of years are simply compressed under immense heat and pressure. Energy formerly stored in the carbon molecules of microscopic organisms gradually collects into rocks and creates natural gas and oil deposits as we know them today.
Go.
The beginning of a huge growth in the oil industry can be attributed to Spindletop, Texas in 1901, when the first oil geyser was found. For several months, a crew was drilling a hole when suddenly their pipe shot out of the ground forcefully. Soon, a geyser of oil shot up 150 feet into the air. Initially, the oil flowed at a rate of 150,000 barrels per day, which was far greater than the total oil production of the United States at the time. The population of the surrounding town went from 10,000 to 50,000, and $80 million was invested into the oil industry. Oil companies such as Gulf Oil, Amoco, and the Humble Oil Company, which later became ExxonMobil, arose. After Spindletop, oil was used as a fuel for new inventions such as the automobile and airplane. It also began to be used as a fuel for ships over coal.
So by the mid-1900s, the world had already developed a huge dependence on oil as a fuel source. It was a vital ingredient in manufacturing processes too. Without oil, the Second World War would have been fought in an entirely different manner. Oil is an indispensable material for creating the rubber for tires, toluene for TNT, runways for the many aircraft that were deployed, and gasoline to fuel the thousands of trucks, aircrafts I just mentioned, jeeps, and tanks. In order to meet the massive demand for oil and to fuel the U.S. war machine, the government enlisted the help of American oil companies. In order to meet the large oil demand, organization and federal involvement in the oil industry was so necessary. In 1941, President FDR created the Petroleum Administration for World War II. Together with leaders of the American oil industry, the Petroleum Industry War Council was founded to provide organization for the national oil effort. Without this effort from the federal government, the U.S. would not have been able to access the massive amounts of oil required for the war effort. Out of the 7 billion barrels of oil used by the Allies throughout World War II, 6 billion of those barrels were American oil. Because of its many uses and the motorized nature of World War II, oil was a defining factor of the 1940s and 1950s.
So now we're gonna talk about the late 1900s. As the car industry boomed in the United States during the post-war suburbia, and American drilling struggled to keep up with the industrial demand, America began to rely on importing oil to fuel the nation's vehicles and factories. Most of the imported oil came from the Middle East, particularly from Iran and Saudi Arabia. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the United States maintained good relations with the oil exporting countries because the Shah of Iran was considered a friend to the nation's interests. However, in 1973, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, commonly known as OPEC, decided to cut all oil exportation to America in response to their alliance with Israel in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Domestic oil prices rose 350% at the pump, and exportation value prices dropped drastically and caused the oil glut of the 1980s. The United States began to ration their reserves and plead an energy conservatism ideal to the people. The embargo against the United States was lifted after U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger succeeded in negotiating a military disengagement agreement between Syria and Israel. However, in 1979, during the Iranian Revolution, oil prices hiked and OPEC again chose to raise its prices for a barrel of oil. Following a few years of slight rationing and inflated prices, OPEC began to lift some of the monetary sanctions and oil production soared once again. With a 200% increase in American production, we began to rise to the top of the oil industry and even drilled domestically in Alaska. In the close of the 20th century, the first Gulf War spiked crude oil prices as Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein invaded the oil fields of Kuwait. Both Iraq and Kuwait were heavily focused on militant interests and began to wean their involvement in the oil industry.
At every stage, oil has a detrimental effect on the environment. Oil extraction can have devastating effects on local ecosystems. However, with GPS, satellite, and seismic sensing technology, fewer wells need to be drilled to discover and extract oil, leading to a smaller footprint on the environment. Oil spills were especially common in the 20th century, but have since decreased in the 21st century due to the improved technology we just discussed. Burning oil may have the most significant impact on the environment, as almost every byproduct released has a negative effect on the environment. Sulfur dioxide, for example, contributes to acid rain, while carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, contributes to global warming. The first Gulf War was seen as especially damaging to the environment, as many oil wells were burned, releasing these toxic chemicals into the air.
In conclusion, the American oil industry has caused U.S. war involvement, economic uproar, and has brought environmental concern to the forefront of scientific study. Regardless, oil is still the main fuel of the American lifestyle and will maintain that role until another energy form is able to become dominant.